Cross-channel remarketing has been a passion of mine for a number of years now. I've spoken on it in a number of different conferences, I've written about it, I've probably even mentioned it in a number of these videos. But I do think that people still leave a lot on the table when it comes to cross-channel retargeting. So in this video, I want to give you an overview of what I'm even talking about with cross-channel remarketing, show you how you can set it up, and then give you some ideas that might make sense for your accounts. We're going to start off with a quick overview of what cross-channel remarketing or retargeting even means. Effectively, we're trying to use another channel's targeting options on a platform that doesn't have something similar. And that might seem a little crazy. Why would we do that? On this channel, we've talked a lot about different strengths of the different channels that we can use. If somebody's conducting a search on Google, they have the intent to research something, they're trying to find out some information. But in that instance, we don't have the ability to target people based on the affinity for certain brands that they have. We're only going off of the search terms that they've been able to type in. Other platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, all those different options have a lot more targeting options for those affinity around brands, but they don't have the intent behind it. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're utilizing the strengths from each channel together, because not all channels are suited for every single business, but that doesn't mean that your users aren't on those platforms. The best example I have of this is that even though you might be a B2B software as a service account, that does not mean that your clientele is not on TikTok. You might not think that it's going to be the best way to reach people for a conversion-focused campaign, but you'd be remiss if you didn't think that your audience wasn't on that platform, scrolling through all of those videos of those people doing all those goofy dances. They're on there, you just might not want to get a demo from them on that platform. So through cross-channel retargeting, we can make certain platforms lean into the targeting options from other channels. The challenge here is that to do this, it takes a bit of work on the front end, and then you have to wait to reap the rewards. It all comes down to tagging. You need to utilize your website retargeting lists, and you're basically going to create audiences of people based on the URL parameters that you assign. Whenever you create a website retargeting audience, on almost every platform, there's an ability for you to customize the rules of which pages people visit. Now, more often than not, you might think about, I want to target people who have been to a certain product page or a certain category, or I want to create an audience of people who visited thank you pages so I can create a lookalike, I can exclude them, so on and so forth. But one thing that people don't often pay attention to is that the URL parameters are also part of that website retargeting list capability. Just because it's not part of the actual page, it's still something that loads in the URL bar. So all of your UTM parameters are eligible to be part of your URL rules for website retargeting lists. We're going to go through a couple examples here in just a little bit, but I do want to emphasize that this is a three-step process. There's no actual way for us to target a certain channel's users on a different channel without an intermediate step. It's just not possible. You can't target people who have engaged with your Facebook page on Google without taking a couple extra steps. For example, you would not be able to target people on Facebook who conducted a search for your brand name on Google without having them come to your website and have some tailored UTM parameters in place first. So what that would look like is that somebody has to conduct that Google search on your brand name. You have to then append the tracking information, source, medium, term, all that good stuff, to the end of your URL, so that when they visit your website, the retargeting pixels will track that somebody visited that page and that that information was part of the web page, the URL. Without them visiting your page and having this information passed through into website retargeting pixels, you cannot create these cross-channel retargeting audiences. But once you do, you can then create your audience of brand searchers in Facebook and target them through your campaigns on that platform. So it does take 3 steps. I'm not trying to say that you can get away with it being something quicker than that, but it's still a really powerful audience targeting option for you to leverage one platform in another. So now that we've gone through kind of the mechanics and why we would do it, I want to give you some real world examples, and we're going to hop into the platform for each one of these. For the first example, let's do one of my favorite that I've done quite a bit for my B2B clients over the years, and that is targeting the Fortune 500 list on Google Ads via a LinkedIn campaign. For this strategy, the first thing that we need to do is create a campaign that targets the Fortune 500 list. So I'm just going to come in here in our placeholder LinkedIn account and click Create, the campaign level. I've skipped ahead a few steps around the campaign settings because that's not important for this specific portion of the video. But to target the Fortune 500, LinkedIn actually has a new section for that. So we go under Audience Attributes, go under Company, Company Category, which is this top one here. And then I would check the box next to Fortune 500, US only. You can also do the Fortune Global 500 if you want to, but for this example, this is the one we're going with. What this will do is target every employee at one of the Fortune 500 companies. I'm not going to show you in this video, but you could go through and narrow your audience to find all sorts of different segments within that. Maybe you just want somebody who's in the financial department. Maybe you just want people in product development. Whatever you need to do to narrow this down to the right folks within the Fortune 500 company, you can do that. But then I'm going to skip ahead over to ad creation. At this point, we'll need to create a new ad. And then aside from all of the other portions of this single image ad, the part that is most important is going to be in this destination URL field. As I mentioned, the way that we create this cross-channel retargeting audience is to make sure that we have UTM parameters assigned to the URL that will designate anybody who comes to the website with this set of parameters as somebody who came from this Fortune 500 campaign. That way we would know these are the Fortune 500 people, and anybody who does not have this set of tracking would not be part of that. So here's a very quick example. Okay, I've typed in all these parameters, and unfortunately, it doesn't actually show you the piece that I need, and this field does not extend. Bear with me. I'm going to copy this destination URL, and I'm going to paste it in the introductory text just so you can see it. So now you can see that the URL that I'm using is paidmediapros.com, UTM source equals LinkedIn, UTM medium equals CPC, and UTM campaign equals Fortune 500. This will still allow us to create audiences that would say somebody came from LinkedIn, was part of a CPC campaign, but it allows us to narrow down into only people who came from a Fortune 500 company. So at this point, we would create our campaigns, get everything set up and running, and hit launch. For the second half of this equation, we need to create an audience in Google Ads to be able to capture this Fortune 500 list. So let's hop into that account real quick. We need to create the Fortune 500 audience in Google Ads. So let's hop up into Audience Manager. And then we'll just come to create a new audience, and we want it to be website visitors. Now you would give this audience segment a name. Since this is a very specific group, it makes sense to give it a very specific name. I want to know that it's a retargeting audience, I want to know that it comes from LinkedIn, and that it has the Fortune 500 companies as part of it. Because if I'm knowing that the audience was originated on LinkedIn, I would want to know what segment that was specifically. Now we get into the rules themselves. So we've got visitors of a page, that part's fine. Match any rule group. As a second part, we need to designate the page URL contains information, or set up any type of URL parameters that will match to those that we used in the campaign itself. Depending on what your advertising marketing mix is, there are a handful of different channels that let you target the Fortune 500. So not only do I want to say that this list is Fortune 500, but I want to designate that it's from LinkedIn specifically. So the easiest way to do that is just to add URL contains, and then put in my source, which is going to be LinkedIn. I also then want to make sure that we have an and statement in here because it needs to contain LinkedIn and it needs to contain Fortune 500. You'll notice I did not put in the medium here. If for some reason somebody on your account is running organic campaigns that have LinkedIn and the Fortune 500 as part of the source and the campaign name, but it's running through an organic post and they're just tagging it differently, you could then also add in the medium here. But effectively, we're now saying that anybody who comes to the website that has URL contains LinkedIn and URL contains Fortune 500 will be part of this list. And that's how we can designate anybody who came to the website from that Fortune 500 targeted list on LinkedIn. Again, it's not a complete and perfect science. On LinkedIn, you get to target as much of the Fortune 500 as you can, but on Google, you only get to target the people who actually clicked on your ad and came to your website and were cookied in that manner. So it's not a complete and total coverage of the Fortune 500, but it's the ones that show interest in your company based on the campaigns that you've used on LinkedIn. The second option here leverages some of the on-platform engagement because, as I've mentioned in other videos, engagement retargeting audiences can be just as powerful as website retargeting audiences. So through this type of strategy, we're trying to target people who have liked our Facebook page on YouTube. Just like last time, the first set that we need to do is to create the audience of Facebook page likes in Facebook and then target it through our campaigns. So let's go into Audience Manager and create that list. We would just need to create a new audience, and we would come down to Custom Audience, And now the source itself is going to need to be from the Facebook page because we're trying to target Facebook page likes. So we'll click that. You can see that conveniently enough in this builder, Facebook is giving us a little notice that says there's a new way to reach people who currently like or follow your page. And that's going to be an option in the events dropdown. So we've already got our Paid Media Pros page selected here. So then in the events section, as Facebook says, you can target people who currently like or follow your page. This includes people who currently like or follow your page on Facebook, and people who unlike and unfollow your page will be removed from this audience. So this is absolutely the best option for that because it's going to be up to date. Once you set in the rest of your parameters, you can create that audience. And then in the campaign setup process, you would set up your targeting in this section to include the custom audience that you just created that would be part of your page likes. I didn't actually create that audience, so it's not going to be set up here, but just so you know, you need to opt into that audience at the ad set level. And then for the ad copy itself, we would need to apply the same logic and setup that we did for the LinkedIn URL just in Facebook. This field also won't show you the entirety of it, so instead I'm going to do build a URL parameter, and now this will show you what we need. So we want to use the URL that we want to promote, and now the source is going to be Facebook, campaign medium is CPC, and then campaign name at this point, just to make it easy, is going to be page likes. So you can see down here at the bottom that the URL preview has Paid Media Pros, source is Facebook, medium is CPC, and UTM campaign is page likes. We would then apply that, and again, run the campaign and bring people to the site with these URL parameters. And then in the Google Ads platform, you would create an audience very similar to what we did before. I've already named this retargeting, Facebook, and page likes with the same logic that followed from the LinkedIn one. And then the page URL contains, and the source is going to be Facebook. And then again, you can also add an and statement so that the page URL contains page likes. And now we're able to target the people who like our Facebook page in our YouTube campaign because we just need to apply this and run it just as if we were running any other retargeting audience. And now for this third option, we're going to just flip that script. What about people who have watched our YouTube videos on Facebook ads? So to create the opposite, the YouTube video viewers, we would need to come into the audience manager in Google Ads again. We'd create a new audience, and this time it's going to be YouTube users. Depending on how you wanted to reach people, you could leave it as viewed any video from a channel, or you can update it to any number of these different custom segments, whether it's subscribed to your channel, liked a video, viewed a video as an ad, whatever you're trying to target, you can just create that audience in Google Ads. And then in the campaign setup process, you would then opt into that video audience that you created at the ad group level to make sure that you're targeting just those people who engage, subscribe to whatever the YouTube videos that you have. And then just like the others, you'd need to set up your final URL to include all of the different information that you want. So here, I'd put this as our website. And then rather than putting all of the parameters in the final URL field, I'm actually going to come down here a little bit and use the tracking template in the URL options section. So that's going to look a little bit like this. I left off the medium this time just because we're not going to be able to see past it anyway because this field is small. But here you can see that I've got the LP URL bracketed language just as it needs to be to fill in the final URL. Just like the other examples I've given, we've got source equals Google, campaign is YouTube video views. There is an S on the end of that, you just can't quite see it. So then to target this audience on Facebook, we would need to first set this campaign live and then jump over to Facebook Audience Manager. And then to create this audience for retargeting, you guessed it, you need to go to Create Audience, Custom Audience. And this time, since the source is from people from the website who have been cookied with a retargeting pixel, we need to choose Website, then Next. So then to customize this list, we need to adjust the events section because right now it's targeting all website visitors. So from this drop down, we need to choose people who visited specific web pages. With that, we'll see a setup that looks very similar to the Google Ads setup. So here, I'm going to try and first match to the source, which is going to be Google. But then I also want them to match based on the YouTube video views tagging. So I would just add in this and also. And then the URL contains field needs to say YouTube video views and click Create Audience. And then over time, once you've accrued enough users in this retargeting audience, you'll be able to target it within your Facebook ads campaign. And you'll be able to reach users who have watched your YouTube videos on that platform. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a perfect science of being able to target a complete audience from one platform to another, but this is a great way to leverage one channel's targeting options in another and try and have a better impact on your target audience. Not only can you retarget just the people who are part of these audiences that you've created, but depending on which platform you're trying to follow people on, let's say taking the example we're looking at now, where we're targeting YouTube video viewers on Facebook, we can then utilize one of Facebook's best targeting options, a lookalike audience, and find users who are similar to our YouTube video viewers on Facebook and maybe attract them, bring them to our YouTube channel, get them to subscribe, engage, all sorts of stuff. These can also be used for exclusions. If you're trying to generate more brand awareness and find net new audience members, it might make sense for you to exclude people across platforms depending on how they've engaged with you. Another example could be utilizing lead generation ads on Facebook, retargeting those users based on an engagement retargeting audience on the platform, and then excluding them from your other advertising platforms. Yes, you might be using your CRM platform and uploading those as custom audiences to exclude people, but again, those don't always have a perfect match rate. So sometimes it can be useful to kind of backstop that and make sure that you've got your audiences mapped out accordingly and that you're not trying to ask the person to continue the same call to action that they've already submitted. Hopefully this overview and these examples have given you a good idea of how valuable cross-channel remarketing can be and give you some ideas about how you can use it in your account. If you have any questions about any of these different setups or any of the different platforms available, please leave us a note in the comments below. Thanks for watching our video. If you thought it was useful, give us a thumbs up below.
We release a new video at least once a week, so if you want to get notified of when a new one comes out, be sure to subscribe to the Paid Media Pros channel.